Mhm.
Hey, there he is, Brother Jerome.
What's going on, Brother
What is
Jay?
good, my friend? What is good?
Great to
How
see
are you?
you,
I'm good, man. It's good to see your face.
man. Great to be seen, man. It's been a while.
I know it's been a while. I think the conversation is well overdue, since our last connection. I mean,
Mhm.
that was when we actually physically met each
Yeah,
other, right?
in San
In San
Diego.
Diego. Yeah, yeah. So, where are you at now?
Right now, I'm in Texas. I'm bouncing around the Lone Star State.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. How's Texas treating you?
Oh, it's nice. It's hot right now. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
feel
been,
you.
it's been
I
hot.
feel you, man. So yeah, so thank you for, chatting with me. I know, like I said, it's long overdue since we met. Probably a lot has happened,
Oh
since
yeah,
then.
yeah. I
On
mean,
both
so
ends.
much, and you're
Yeah.
on the other side of the world.
Yes, I am. So, long story short, my family and I, we just sold everything. Now we're just traveling the world all over Asia.
Wow,
So
wow.
it's it was a decision made by my wife and I because we, love to travel. Our kids are still young and we want them to experience the world firsthand. So we just made the
Nice.
leap, and here we are. You
And
know,
you're doing.
and right now it's like 8:05 a.m. on Sunday.
So,
So
you're actually in the future. I'm in the
yeah,
past.
right, right. See, time is the illusion, right? I mean, we're in two different time areas in at once.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's exactly what is happening right now. And it's honestly, I still have to get acclimated, to the different time zones. We have clients, all over the world, so
Mhm.
it's like setting up the time. I'm like, wait a second, if they're on Eastern time, I'm in the okay, so I have to do it in the morning, and then like make sure like it's right. And sometimes I'm totally off, and then I'll be honest, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I thought it was like 8 a.m. my time, but looked at it differently. So if we can reschedule.
Mhm.
you
So
know?
when you say clients, Jay, do you mean still like the emotion? I remember there was emotional code.
Yeah.
Is it with that or something different now?
Yeah, so that's evolved into coaching clients. So I still use the energy healing modalities of emotion code and body code.
Okay.
But I use it uh, as a complementary service to my holistic wellness coaching
Hmm.
business. Um, as you've known, you've experienced it yourself, right? I mean,
Yeah.
emotion code is a very in-depth
Yeah.
healing modality that helps you release trapped
Hmm.
emotions. And then the body code is a really comprehensive healing modality that um, uncovers a lot of the imbalances and disharmony in your physical body.
Right.
So
Right.
as a coach, I use that to get to the deeper rooted issues of why we might have these imbalances in our lives. It could be an imbalance with anything, like recovery, trauma, aches and pains in your body. I mean, it's a lot. A lot of my clients have different ailments or different issues that they want to overcome
Yeah.
and work through. And sometimes, traditional uh, things that they do really don't work. But when we get to the core issue of it,
Mhm.
it opens up a whole new understanding of why they are in it, unable to get through it
Right.
because most of it comes from very deep rooted issues.
Right.
So,
Right. Because I remember, when you did it with me, that was transformational. You know, like
yeah, yeah,
DJ that I didn't even know was possible. Like you
right,
were sitting in, you were tapping in, and then I remember that you found that there was like either a wooden or like a steel
art,
block, like
yeah.
something in my
Mm,
heart. It was like
Mm-hmm.
blocking the heart wall. It was like a wall.
Mm-hmm.
And you even found stuff in, you know, people before me, you
Yeah,
know, like
inherited. Yeah.
my parents, my ancestors, generations back, and I had no idea that stuff was even possible. So the work that you're doing is amazing, man.
Oh
Seriously.
man. Yeah. Thank you. It was, you know, very transformational for I think everyone that I've ever was able to, you know, do, including myself. Like I didn't know any of this as well until I went through, you know, my own journey with implementing the emotion code after I read the book. And we stumbled upon it because, you know, my wife was going through postpartum depression and anxiety, and she completely, you know, healed herself from it by using this technique. And, you know, it's literally changed our lives, which is why we decided to become practitioners and help other people, you know, experience this amazing modality. And, you know, Dr. Bradley Nelson, you know, says it best, like we have the ability to heal ourselves. We just need the right tools.
Mm.
And this tool is definitely something that you can definitely learn. It's easy to do. You know, our bodies hold all of the secrets in healing. We can activate our healing if we want to. And one of the tools to do that is just being able to identify some of these emotional, energetic blocks by way of, you know, muscle testing.
Right.
So it's incredible. And the stuff that you experience, you know, like things come up with a lot of my clients that they've suppressed throughout their lives, like me included. You know, when I started doing the work on myself, a lot of things from my past like came up to
Mm.
consciousness. Because you know, when we go through trauma and we feel these, when we experience these events, what our subconscious does is it tries to protect us
Mm.
at all times. And so when there's a traumatic event, it either suppresses or it starts to replay that event, and that's what's called PTSD.
Mm.
So if we're not able to suppress it enough, then it just keeps replaying over and over and over, which can cause disharmony, or you know, it can cause negative mindsets, negative behaviors, right? Reactionary triggers that happen throughout our lives as we get older. So things get worse and worse unless we're aware of it, and then we can change it, or you know, heal ourselves, or you know, get help, or whatever you need to do, right?
Right.
But the subconscious is a very powerful computer that we have in our being, and it remembers everything.
Mm-hmm.
So with those type of events, it also knows how to help us work through
Mm.
it. And so with this type of work, when you identify those trapped emotions, you know, and you bring it up to surface, you're able to release it with your pure intention, you know. And once that energy is released, then you can activate all the healing mechanisms in your body,
Right.
because that's how super intelligent our bodies are. You
Right.
know? And
Amazing.
I didn't know that until I started doing the work,
Yeah.
you know, on myself, you know. Like I said, a lot of things came up from my childhood that I truly forgotten
Well,
because it's
I
suppressed.
mean, what was one of the things that you found out when you did this on yourself? What was one of the things that that you found out that you had actually suppressed, that you had no idea that you suppressed? And then what happened when you brought that into harmony, you know?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. And I always tell this story because it's very deep rooted within me. And it didn't come up because, like I said, it was a very traumatic event, and it never came up to surface until I started doing this work.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was 7, 8 years old, I was literally about to unalive myself. And I had the knife in my hand, looking at my wrist, about to unalive myself at 7 or 8. And I was about to, like, I remember I was about to run away because I was so hurt by my father. You know, he was very strict, verbally, emotionally, physically abusive, but that was the best he can do at that time. Knowing now, my healed version right now, knowing why he was the way he was. But when I was 7 or 8, my inner child at that time, was really confused of why he can treat me that way. His own son, his own flesh and blood. And I remember I told my sister, let's run away. Like, I don't, I don't want to be here no more. And I woke up really early, packed my backpack, and then I went to my sister's room and she didn't want to do it. She was like, I don't want to run away. And for some reason that really hurt me. And the only thing that was going through my mind at the time was that I don't want to be here, because I don't want to, I guess, run away by myself. And so I went downstairs in the kitchen, was holding this knife in my hand, my right hand. I was looking at my wrist in the left hand. And I was going to do it. But luckily, I didn't, right? And so that memory came to surface, came to my consciousness as I was doing this energy healing. And when it came to consciousness, all the emotions came with it, low self-esteem, overwhelm, anxiety, nervousness, worry, all these, negative vibrating emotions at such a young age. And when I felt it come up, it was like a release, like it was like a full body experience. And of course I was bawling and crying and, like I was almost like hysterical, but that's what happens when you have all of these trapped emotions inside of your body. And once you're able to channel it out and release it through whatever modality you use, it's going to be a physical reaction. Because what the energy does is it traps itself somewhere in your body, in your muscles, in your tissues, your bones, your nervous system, right? But when you're able to activate yourself to release it, then that energy has to flow out. It's gonna purge itself from your body. And most times the purging feels like, immense crying or tingle sensations or just like this weight lifted off of your body. And that's what it felt like. And I was able to like connect deeper with my inner child, give him a hug and really show so much gratitude for him to make that decision not to do it that night. Because if he did, I wouldn't be here, right? We would be in a different realm somewhere else, right? And so, and when it did come up, it was hard for me to verbalize and articulate what I was feeling in the moment. But after doing a lot of reflection and introspection with it, releasing more and more of that, like that's why it's comfortable for me to talk about that. Initially, like I said, I wasn't able to do it because I didn't even remember it.
Right.
Even my wife, like the first person I told was my wife, and she was like, "You've never told me that story." I was like, "Cause I totally forgot it. It was so suppressed that it was like, deep within my subconscious mind. Probably because I didn't want to relive it over and over.
Right.
So that was one of the major, releases that I had. Excuse my
It's all good.
my infant in the background. She's
All
like,
good.
every morning she gets up, she needs to start screaming.
All good. All good. And thank you, that vulnerability. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for just the testimony of the things that can be trapped, inside bodies. Because, as you're speaking and you're talking about these emotions, these things that, like you said, become, post-traumatic. And when they're trapped in the body, like you said, trapped in the nervous system or in the muscles or in the tissues, if they're not purged, if they're not released, what is the manifestation of that energy if it just stays stuck in the body?
Another great question. So what energy is, right, or what emotions are, is energy in motion. So when we feel an emotion or this energy, what our body is telling us is, hey, something's happening. You're experiencing an event. And whatever it may be, that energy, just like every other type of energy, it needs to flow. I mean, you practice qigong, right? Like qigong is a way of cultivating energy and letting it go with the flow, right? The same thing with emotions. When you feel an emotion, you have to be able to feel it, express it, process it, and then let it go, right? I mean, what happens is an emotion only lasts maybe up to 90 seconds once we're able to feel it. But what we were taught as a kid, or throughout our upbringing or childhood or by society, whatever, we're taught to suppress. Most of us have been taught to suppress the emotions. So when we feel something, someone says, don't cry, or don't feel, or man up, or don't let me see you crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. And of course that traumatizes us right there, because we're not allowed to feel safe enough to express our emotions fully. So what happens to that energy or that emotion, it then finds its way somewhere in the body and gets trapped in there, right? There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score, and it illustrates this point very clearly. That energy becomes like this energy ball that gets trapped inside of your body. Let's say you felt an emotion of despair, and that despair energy traps itself in your shoulder, right, in the muscles, in the fibers, and over time nothing really happens, because the energy is still a really small, pea-sized, blueberry-sized ball of energy. But over time, as it goes unresolved, that energy ball continues to grow larger and larger.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day, it can manifest as sharp shoulder pain. And the crazy thing is, you've experienced that shoulder pain and you didn't even do nothing.
Right.
Like you didn't, hit yourself, or you didn't, injure yourself. It just came and went. And for most of us, when we have a sharp pain like that, we disregard it because it goes away, right? But that's your body telling you, hey, there's an imbalance in your body. Like our bodies are always speaking to us through pain, through tingles, through sensations, through emotions. But most of us, we're not really connected with our body enough to really listen, because like I said, we're always disregarding things if it goes away. And so once that pain hits, that's your body telling you, hey, warning sign, something's going on here. I think you should look at it. But then most of us, when it goes away, we're like, oh, okay, cool. I'll just go about my day. And then maybe 6 months later, the pain gets worse. Now you're waking up, with throbbing pain. And you're like, what? How come? How come it's sore now? How come it's like it's not going away as usual? And you go see the doctor, and the doctor's like, oh, everything looks normal. Why don't you just take some aspirin? Most of my clients that come to me with pain, like they've gone through the traditional way of going to see the doctor and all that stuff, and they tell them the same thing, like nothing's really wrong, and then they give them, medicine. And the medicine kind of masks the pain a little bit, but it really doesn't take the root cause of that pain.
Mm-hmm.
So when we do energy work, we understand that there's something in there causing that pain, that has manifested that pain. And most times it's a deep-rooted issue, a deep-rooted emotion that they didn't feel. So for example, every time someone comes to me, a client comes to me with pain, I always ask my client, what happened before the pain? Do you remember? Right? And most times they have this like kind of look on their face like, before that I did, go through something pretty crazy, but I didn't think that it was going to cause pain. And so I asked some more, like, what was it that you were going through? And people would say, oh, I went through a breakup, I got a divorce, or that's when I got kicked out of my house. And I was like, and well, how did that feel like? What did that make you experience, And then boom, most times my clients are like, oh, I felt so much XYZ emotion. And then when you look at the connections between emotions and body parts, you can already see, you know. So people who have a lot of GI issues or anxiety or depression, they have a lot of pain in their abdomen, right? Because when you get anxious, what happens? Your stomach starts to hurt, right? Most times that anxiety or that depression, that fear, it gets trapped in your abdomen. It actually gets generated in those organs in your abdomen too. And if it goes unresolved, a lot of my clients have anxiety. They also have GI issues, you know, stomach issues. Or if you have lower back issues, it's a lot of fear. It's a lot of instability. Your root chakra is misaligned or imbalanced in that aspect, right? So energy work reveals that for them. And like I said, that's why I use it as a complementary service, or, you know, a service for my coaching clients, so we can get to the root cause of it, and then, you know, bring it up to light, talk about it, reflect about it, and then be able to release, you know, those emotions. So those are some of the examples of how these trapped emotions can manifest itself into physical pain, right? Even external blocks. You know, a lot of people have blocks with like money and abundance, right? That all comes from, you know, experiences, traumatic experiences around money, right? Around the idea of money, or, you know, their traumatic events when they were a kid, when they weren't able to get things, or what, you know, their parents told them about money, or their belief systems, right? All of that intertwines when we do this work.
Okay. Okay. Jay, thank you. You thank you for that breakdown. I love just how thorough you really break things down. You really, like, you know, just list all of the factors and all of the things that are just so essential to learn about the body. And I gotta go check out that book now. The Body Keeps the Score. You said that book.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
you know, realize more about how these things are all within. And it's a beautiful place to begin, you know, when you go. So I mean, goodness, like when you were talking, I was thinking to myself about how you said, okay, we need to feel it, we need to express it. You said we need to process it and then let it go and release it. And it seems to be, at least it seems to me, that children instinctually know how to do this. It seems like, you know, you see a child laughing, or you see a child crying, and you see a child releasing all the time. It's like they're doing energy work. The children
Yes.
work.
Yes. And I'm so happy you brought that up, because that's a prime example of how we're supposed to feel it and then process it and let it go, right? Children instinctually have that ability to feel their emotions because they're so present in the moment. They're even at a different brainwave than us as adults, right? Because they're not hindered by, you know, the conditioning or the programming. So when I look at my kids, and I have 3 kids, you know, under 6, right? I have a 15-month-old, a 3-month-old, and a 5-year-old. And when they feel, they are fully expressive, right? Even when they're mad or upset or frustrated, you know, you can see it in their face, their body language, they start to cry. And then once they're done, what happens? They go right back to their natural state of being happy and, you know, happy-go-lucky, not worried. I mean, that is the natural state of how we're supposed to be. And doing this work, you know, most people think like, well, then that means you can't feel any type of negative emotions. No, we're not saying, I'm not saying that at all. You are supposed to feel all spectrums of the emotions. That's what makes us human. But the way you process the emotions is what's important, right? And the better we can process and let go and work and, you know, even verbalize and articulate our emotions, the better we can then release it, so that we're not being weighed down by that energetic, you know, attachment to those emotions. Like I said, most of us were taught to internalize and suppress these emotions. That's why we become triggered, or we become affected by it later on in life, because that energy ball of emotion has been compounding throughout the years. And then, you know, we walk down the street and someone looks at us kind of weird, and then boom, we get triggered. You know, we get into an altercation. We're asking you, like, why you gotta look at me like that? Like, but you know, what I mean, he was just looking at you normally. Like we couldn't do it objectively, because now that energy body, and I think Eckhart Tolle, you know, talks about this pain body too, right? It's all connected with the pain body, because this energy has been compounding within our physical body for a long time. I mean, I can attest this, because I've been through it myself. I was a very angry, I had a very, very bad temper, a very angry, you know, individual, and I would get triggered so fast. You know, you ask my wife, like, so many arguments, you know, trying to defend myself, and things that she would say would trigger me. You know, even if she asked me, like, oh, how come you didn't take out the garbage? Trigger, you know, then argument, you know what I mean? I would walk out on her and give her a silent treatment, verbally abuse her and all this stuff. And it was horrible, you know, but I really didn't understand why my behavior was like that until I started to, you know, really work on myself and understand the effects of unresolved trauma and emotions.
Right. Right. So, you know, I love what you were talking about, how, you know, we're taught a lot of these things, and how we grow up, you know, with these belief systems, and really just on holding this stuff in. There's so many ideas surrounding, you know, how it's said, like, oh, you're strong. There's a sense that you're strong if you hold it in, but expressing it is a weakness, you know? And I would love to see, like, why not this feel, this sounds like it should be like in our curriculum. It sounds like these are things that we should actually be taught, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And Jerome, I love your questions, by the way. You are a great question asker. Let me just just put that there. Ever since we met, I mean, I've told you many, many times before, even since we first met and did the whole live thing together, like, you're so mindful and articulate about asking the best questions. Man, I love that. So thank you for that. But yeah, this idea of internalizing and suppression, I totally agree with you. We should be teaching it into curriculum. We should be having the example and looking at our kids, you know, and understanding, like, this is the way we're supposed to do it. And I think that attachment of being weak, you know, because we're expressing, I think that's a lot of societal, you know, limiting beliefs and behaviors, because it's been in our society for such a long time, right? I mean, I grew up in a, you know, Asian household. My parents did the same thing. My dad did the same thing. I couldn't feel anything, right? I mean, by the time I was like in elementary school, I was already emotionally numb, because every time I would feel something, I would get punished, or I would get shamed or guilted, or, you know, I would be disciplined, right? So there was no time for emotions at all, because that was a weakness. And so what happened after many, many years, as I became an adult, that, like I said, those trapped, suppressed emotions showed itself as negative behaviors, as addictions to vices, as poor decision making, right? It impacts our behaviors. So if we start to be more open and have this conversation about how we can regulate our emotions from a very young age and help people do that, I think society will benefit greatly. You know, we're not going to have this stigma of, like, oh, you know, being vulnerable or showing emotions is a sign of weakness. It's about, hey, that's actually strength.
Right.
Especially for us men, you know, like, most men, it's hard for us to talk about our feelings. I was one of them. Like, my wife would label me emotionally disabled because I couldn't express anything. Like, I was like a one-word answer type of guy. Like, how you feeling today, babe? Good. Even though, like, I'm thinking and, you know, all these things are impacting me, like, I wouldn't say shit. You know, like, I was just like, good. I didn't know how to articulate. I didn't know how to verbalize. Like, I lost the connection within my body to even feel. So anytime an emotion or feeling would come up, I would always suppress it automatically. And what happens what happens to your body when you do that? You start to tense up, right? You start to feel this rigidity. You start to feel tightness. Your breathing gets, you know, staggered, right? And then even, you know, your muscles tense up, you get tight, and then what do you have to do? You have to go release it some way. So my way of releasing it was going somewhere to the gym and, like, you know, punching it all out. But even that is not effective, because once your emotions become that suppressed, you know, it seeps into every part of you, right?
Yeah.
Not just your physical body, but like your mental, your physical, emotional, spiritual, you know, aspects of yourself. And so I think there is a lot of conversation about it, but I think there needs to be more conversation about it. And I see a lot of influencers and coaches and shows and, you know, things about, you know, dealing with this. And I think there's a huge shift in having this conversation be more open,
Yeah.
because we're seeing a lot of the repercussions of the other side of not talking about it, of generational trauma, of, you know, these suppressed emotions in our youth.
Hmm.
You know, like, there's so much statistics coming out right now of how our youth are really suffering, you know, it's getting younger and younger, which is very alarming. But what does that tell you? Like, you know, the youth is actually, you know, getting some of that treatment from, you know, us adults who are still traumatized, right? We're just projecting our own trauma unconsciously to our children. And that's another thing that needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
And it's not been talked about as much, right?
Right. Right. Which is great that we're even having a conversation like this, you
Yeah.
know? Because even as you were speaking, Jay, I was thinking to myself, like, not only are we taught this at times by, you know, maybe our parents or the parental figures that might be over us, but also throughout society in things like the programming from like movies, you know, Hollywood, different portrayals of male figures or different figures, different role models or people we look up to who are like the very stoic, stalwart, you know, figure doesn't
Right.
emote, doesn't have any emotion, that's very, you know, direct and very gets things done, gets the job done, but doesn't cry, doesn't, you know, ever express themselves.
Yeah.
And if you look up to somebody on the big screen like that, I mean, that's going straight into your subconscious, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of, you know, programming and, like I said, shows that depict that, and that could definitely impact what we believe within ourselves.
Right.
Most of us, not if not all, we've been conditioned since we were young, right, to have these type of beliefs, to have these type of behaviors surrounding emotional expression or surrounding vulnerability, and it definitely impacts our capability going forward when we grow up to be the best version of ourselves. You know, and I can honestly speak from my own experience. I mean, I was doing that to my eldest daughter. You know, she's 14 now from my previous relationship, and I was doing the same thing that my dad was doing to me.
Okay.
So you can see the generational trauma and the patterns that happen if we decide not to heal,
Yeah.
right? It took me hitting rock bottom, my father, you know, the major source of my unresolved traumas, him passing away, and then, you know, my daughter, and then me breaking up with, you know, my daughter's mother at the time, and then not having no job, you know, living with my mom, like, just, you know, rock bottom depressed, for me to realize, like, damn, something needs to happen. I need to wake up, because this is not the life that I wanted to live, right? Fortunately, I was able to do that because I had a good support system, and I was working, you know, I started off with like physical self-care, getting into the gym, you know, doing all this stuff. But some of us, we don't have that.
Right.
And so it's important to understand that, you know, once we get there, our first realization we need to have is the awareness. Like, damn, like, my life is kind of messed up right now. Like, I need to do something. You know, I teach my students and my clients about the 5 stages of the healing journey.
Mhm.
that I talk about, you know, and it all starts with A. And the first one is awareness. We have to have the awareness, like something is going on. Like my life is, something's happening and I need to do something about it, right? And like I said, unfortunately, it always comes with a huge tragedy to wake us up. You know,
Mhm.
most of us go throughout life unconscious
Mhm.
because we're used to that comfort, even if it's suffering.
Mhm.
You know, I think it's an epidemic that people would choose to suffer, but because they're unconscious and unaware and not aware of it, they would rather do that and go out throughout their whole lives still suffering, right?
Yeah.
Because the tragedy hasn't, it wasn't big enough yet to wake them up,
Right.
you know. And I always say, like, you know, there's two reasons why we begin to heal. It's if we're aware enough that we want to,
Mm.
or we're suffering so much that we need to,
Right.
right? I mean,
Right.
if you're suffering so much, you're gonna wake up and be like, I need to change my life. I need to do something different because I don't want to suffer no more. You know
Right.
what I mean?
So it's almost like through inspiration or desperation.
Yes,
You know,
exactly. Yeah.
like we be desperate or we need to be inspired. And sometimes it's a mixture of both that really engenders that change. Because
Yes.
I mean, geez, man, I'm thinking back to myself, and now I'm getting even more of a well-rounded picture of what you were able to do and how you were able to change and have your own transformations, and how it was such a practice for you to all, like, you were such a role model for me and others. When you talked earlier, Jay, about influencers and coaches, you were one of those influencers and coaches for me and for others in the group that you started on Facebook. You know, this goes back to like ULA, you
Yeah.
know, like what did life, you
Yeah.
know, Unlimited Life Academy, like
Yes, yes,
we were
yes.
doing lives together, but then you started this challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it like it was yesterday. You started this challenge. We were going, we said something we were very vulnerable about.
Mm-hmm.
We stated truth. We stated like so many different things about ourselves. And it was a challenge, and it was every day, something
Every day.
else every day. And it got more challenging, more open,
Right.
more
Right.
vulnerable, you know, and it was just the heart. By the end, the heart was just so wide open
Yeah.
for like a whole new person. It was amazing because you actually, you were the one, you and Earl Kapule
Yes.
were,
Gratitude mindset. Shout out to Earl.
yeah, like you were on the front lines, you
Yeah.
know, if you're on the battlefield, you know, in our mind and kind of opening up in this way and, you know, releasing emotions, you and Earl were on the front lines. You were leading the troops, you were leading the charge, and you were saying like this is the way, you know, like the way.
Yeah. Oh man, thank you so much for that. I received those kind words wholeheartedly,
Yeah.
and I think we're both on the journey at that time, you know. And I think shout out to Coach Corey with the ULA, you know, putting together the Catalyst,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Facebook group to help us break out of our mold of going live and being vulnerable and sharing. You know, I mean, going live like this, not a lot of people, you know, are comfortable doing this and speaking their truth and speaking what, you know, they feel because, you know, backlash and afraid of what people might say. So in those times when we did that, it was definitely working that muscle of vulnerability. And I put together that challenge because not only did I want to help others, but for myself too. You know, like
Right.
I wanted to really be open, be an open book, and be very transparent in some of the things that I was sharing, because there are things that I was not sharing. And at the end of the day, I wanted to be comfortable in speaking that. And from that instant, I learned, based on all the comments and based on all the people that joined that challenge, I learned that when you share your story, you never know who you're going to impact. And I remember getting direct messages and comments like, man, Jay, like you really helped me understand myself, and you really gave me the inspiration to like come out and talk about something very personal to me. and it changed my life, you know? And that to me is priceless. You know, you can't, there's no, I mean, helping someone do that based on what you're doing, you know, is like incredible. And so that's why I'm such a proponent about, you know, telling your story, right? I mean, there's truth in your message, even if it's messy, you know? So, because when you go on live or, you know, platforms like this and you share your story and you're vulnerable, someone will connect to it, even though you might not get the response right away. You never know who you're going to impact.
Right.
And with that understanding, like, you know, I was double down, you know, and I was like, I want to do this. I want to help transform people's lives because, you know, it's helped transform my life. And,
Right.
you know, I think everyone, you know, deserves that because a lot of us are suffering in silence, you know, and now it's we should break away from that suffering in silence because there is hope. There's a way.
I agree. I agree. And Jay, I'm telling you, man, like it was so empowering just to be able to witness yourself just in that state, just being vulnerable, opening yourself and revealing truths about yourself that, you know, you might not have been comfortable with, but you really took up the challenge and it created a ripple effect. Like you said, it's priceless to be able to have that energy you put out come back in ways that you could never imagine that you would affect people's lives in that way. Just talking about things that had happened to you or things that were in your innermost, you know, the regions of your mind, and just taking the time to allow that light.
Yes.
So it's amazing to see that. And also you were doing multiple challenges,
Yeah.
bro. Like I mean, you were doing the ULA challenge, you were going live regularly, and then you had your page, you were doing the challenge on your page, then you were doing gratitude every day this, every day something, every single day, and compounding.
Yeah.
You saw the effects of it. It's amazing to see that, you know, to see the growth.
Yeah. And, you know, I think Earl Kapule, you know, put it eloquently when he said, you know, challenges change people, right? They have the ability to change people. When you get outside your comfort zone, you know, that's where change happens. And you don't have to get outside a lot. Just over the threshold of being comfort. That's where change and growth happens. And for me at that time, I wanted to challenge myself a lot. And even joining, you know, Earl's challenge of gratitude, like I was never the person to practice gratitude, you know, and maybe like a lot of people too, like we're only grateful when good things happen. But from his challenge, I was like, we need to be grateful for everything, even the small things, even the things that, you know what I mean? Like we most often disregard. And so going through all those things really transformed and changed myself, right? And I think putting together those challenges and like also participating it, you know, actively participating in it as well, you know, continue to push me over and over and over to get outside my comfort zone, to be more authentic, to be more grateful, you know, to be more open and honest with, you know, everything that I was going through. And like I said, when all that stuff happened, everything else transpired, you know. And that's the beautiful thing about healing, about transformation. You said it yourself. It's the ripple effect. Because what happens when you start to transform and change for the better? Your instinctual behavior is you want to tell someone else. You want to help someone else, right? You want to be like, hey, Jerome, I've been doing this crazy meditation that's been helping me like deal with my anxiety. Like, I think you should do it, right? That's an instinctual act once you start to feel better about yourself, once you start to transform and heal and have these like, you know, realizations about yourself, you know? And that's what starts the ripple effect. You know, I always say like, that's why healing and transformation is so important, because not only you're doing it for yourself, but organically, you're going to start creating your own ripple effect. When the people around you are ready and when they see you, they're going to be inspired by you. It's going to spark curiosity first, like, whoa, Jerome, you're different. How come how come you're not as like upset, or how come you're like just always happy? What are you doing, right? This sparks like curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
and they're gonna start asking you questions, and your instinctual behavior is like, oh, I'm doing this and I feel good. You know, I've been doing a lot of qigong and breath work and getting out in the sun gazing. Like, it's helped me so much,
Yeah.
right? And then they're gonna start asking these questions, and they're gonna start to implement it in their own lives from your transformation,
Mm-hmm.
right? We can be the inspiration for others,
Right.
and that's what that's what one of the pillars that I really value when I coach and when I, go on these platforms, TikTok, and make content. Like, I want to empower people to understand that you have this ability,
Yeah.
right? And it's a sacred journey, because once you can do it for yourself, you're going to be impacting so many people, and you don't even know it. Won't even know it, right?
Right. You
So,
know, just even as you're saying that, you're taking me down memory lane right now. But like it was so empowering. You know, it was enthusing, it was empowering, it was enlightening, but it
yeah.
was also encouraging. You know, it was like letting people know their own awesomeness. I think that was the thing. It was
Yes.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
own awesomeness.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so there.
Exactly. Yeah. It was Utah. Unleash the true awesomeness inside. I mean,
Yeah,
we have,
you tight.
yeah. Yeah. That message has like evolved into like all these other things, but that's where it started. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's where this idea of like unleashing, what you have inside, and your
Mhm.
awesomeness can be in your story, even in your trauma, even in the suffering that you experience,
Mhm.
can be transformed and transmuted into awesomeness,
Yeah.
into this amazing message, into this message of
Mhm.
hope and inspiration and motivation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yourself too. I mean, when you had your challenges, I mean, the way you were eloquently, telling your story and motivation, and the connections you made with your, things that you've read and quotes, it was beautiful. Like, I love listening to you just talk, because of the energy that comes and connects with the words that you say, and plus with the tone of your voice, it's very healing, and it's very, serene. Just listening to your podcast, I'm like, yeah, this helps my nervous system calm down. You know what I mean?
Man.
But then, like, I also got this instant connection to you
Mhm.
because of who you are. And when you're in your most authentic self like that, and you're expressing yourself fully, people are going to connect to that. Not everyone, but
Right.
the right people will connect, and that's all you need.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you also have to understand, like, you can't save and change everyone. It's only those that are connected to you, or that you can, energetically, help and heal and connect with them, right?
Right.
Everyone can have their own journey, but you can
Mhm.
definitely impact people, the right people, for sure.
Right. That's a great point that you make there, Jay, because, I definitely agree with you, that there's definitely so many people that have the eyes to see and the ears to hear your message, that you could say something, and someone else can say something, and it's going to resonate with different kinds of people just because
Right.
a different person said it.
Yeah.
It could be the same words, but it hits someone in a completely different way. So when it came to connecting with people, who were some of the people, the mentors, or maybe even motivational speakers that you might have watched or you might have grown up seeing that really impacted you or influenced you to have that kind of personality?
Oh, wow. Great question. I have so much. I mean, when I was in my depths of despair and coming out of it, um, my mentors were these speakers, watching YouTube videos and motivational speeches, reading books, right? I mean, I was listening like to Tony Robbins, David Goggins, E.T., the hip hop preacher, Les Brown. I mean, who else? Um, Wayne Dyer, Bob Proctor, like all these great, amazing, stoic, people who were just exuding this type of motivation and inspiration that I needed at that time. And like you mentioned, you know, when you're ready to listen, because you've been suffering so much, you will listen, you know. And sometimes, you know, it also comes in that divine timing too, because it's like when it's not your time, it doesn't matter what anyone says, even me as a coach or you or your podcast, they're not going to receive it and implement right away. When it's time and when they're ready, you know, their ears will start to perk up. They will start to implement action. Their behaviors will change, right? That's why in, you know, with coaching, I'm not pressuring anyone. It's like when you're ready, I'm here to guide you. But you also have to understand you're going to put in a lot of work. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to help you through it, but you're going to have to put in a lot of work as well if you want to create this transformation for the rest of your life. And so, you know, listening to those people, reading so many books. I mean, I went through a whole self-help section, you know, books, anything I can get on. I became an audiobook addict, you know, listening to all these podcasts too, audiobooks. I think one of my favorite podcasts is the Model Health Show, John Stevenson.
John Stevenson.
Yes, yeah, he talks a lot about, you know, just overall health and well-being and fitness, and I really connected with him and the way he is, because I felt like he was so raw and authentic, and even his little antics during, you know, his podcasts and stuff like that. But yeah, like those were the people who I really, you know, started to listen to.
Yeah.
And then got into other authors and, you know, speakers. The person that I'm getting into right now a lot is Dr. Nicole LaPera, the holistic psychologist. Also, you know, Brene Brown, you know, The Power of Vulnerability, that pretty much cemented my understanding of vulnerability and how to, you know, be very authentic with myself and be sensitive in ways that I've never ever felt before. So, you know, those are the two, you know, people that I follow now. If you don't follow Dr. Nicole LaPera, man, do it. Her content is just amazing. It's like every post I read, it's like, oh, it's like a realization. It's like an epiphany. Like, oh my, that's exactly how I was feeling. You know, like it takes you back to that moment, and you're like, she just eloquently said it in the most simplest words, and it just made me feel so validated. You know what I mean? Like, and you can tell, like, because when you read her comments through her posts, like, there's thousands of them, right? I mean, and my wife, I found out about her from my wife, because she was following her when she wasn't even that big yet. Like when she had like maybe like 10,000 followers on Instagram, and then she kind of like blew up because like she was talking about, you know, reparenting yourself, you know, the term of reparenting, right? The term of self-healing. And she's a psychologist, so she came from a perspective of psychology that I've never even heard of before, you know, because she even said openly that when you go see a psychiatrist or a doctor to help with, or a therapist or whatever, right? You go there for the hour and, you know, you're talking about everything, you're working through things, but then what happens when you leave? You know, those things can still come up, and there's nothing that pretty much happens until the next session. So how are you going to sustain yourself, you know, and to work through what happened in that session? So she came up with all these tools and all these different resources of how you can help yourself heal. And she has a whole community about like self-healers and stuff like that. You know, she talks a lot about like activating and regulating your nervous system, because that's what gets impacted when we feel trauma or when we experience, you know, trapped emotions or whatnot. And she's helping, you know, people like implement these tools that help, you know, sustain themselves in between the sessions, right? And this is coming from a psychologist, like you know what I mean, like a certified psychologist. You're like, whoa, that's different, you know, like. So, like I said, if you don't follow her, bro, like I highly recommend you. She has a book out called How to Do the Work, which is another great book as well. Like she really goes into detail about how you can uncover some of these imbalances and blocks, with your emotions and events. And she teaches you how to do it. And even her other platform on TikTok, right? She has this like role playing skits that she does with her partner about how generational trauma can impact how we parent our kids, by just the things that we say.
Yeah.
So because of my healing and because of all things that I've learned from her and other books that I've read, like I've become a very conscious parent. I'm very aware of how I act, how I regulate my emotions, the things that I say to my kids and what I do in front of my kids. Like, kids are sponges. So like you say one thing and you don't think that they're hearing, and it comes up later in a conversation, and you're like, wait, how did you hear me? So like as a parent, we have to be very aware,
Yeah.
and conscious. If we're not, you can see the effects, because what they're doing is they're observing us 24/7, almost. Like that's what it seems like, right? Even when we're not paying attention, they're paying attention, because they're at a different brain wave of receptivity of all of the stimuli that's coming into them, right? And I have all young ones, so like my wife and I, we're really, we're really active and really conscious in how we speak and what we say. Even when we like feel emotions, we try to be very conscious about how we go through those emotions and how we regulate ourselves. Even when I do my self-care activity, like all my kids know, like, oh, dad's gonna dad is gonna go do his me time, or mommy's gonna do her me time, and they know to leave us there for whatever hour we need, right? But then we also teach them too, like, hey, it's okay to take breaks when you're feeling overwhelmed. Like, you need to go take a break. Cool. Like, you need some support. You need help. You need a hug. You want daddy to just listen to you. And sometimes they'll tell us, like, yeah, I just need a hug. Hug it out. You know what I mean? Let them cry, whatever. And then we go about our day. So it's important that we, do all that. Like, and I said, like for me, I've learned a lot through, following like Dr. Nicole LePera and the things that she teaches about this type of stuff, because it really impacts our family, really impacts, even my relationship with my wife.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Thank you for just thank you for even bringing the parenting perspective, because, I'm not a parent myself. I don't have any children. So it's interesting to see how it makes you more mindful, that you develop even more mindfulness just being a parent and knowing that you're being watched.
Yes, for sure. I mean, you're being watched, you're being listened to, you're being, observed,
Right.
everything.
Right.
Like I said, it's when you watch children, they're at a different capacity of receiving information than we are, right? Because we've learned through programming and conditioning, what not to listen to or what's right and wrong, right? For them, everything is just brand new. So they're just absorbing everything, and they're not just absorbing. I want to make a clear point here. They're not just absorbing what they see and what they hear. They're also absorbing what we feel as parents. They can also absorb our emotions. So that's why in the emotion code and body code, we're going to bring it back to where we first started. Emotions can also be inherited. That's why when I worked on you, a lot of trapped emotions were inherited from your father, from your mother, right? And this explains that type of generational trauma that happens. So when you look at mental ailments or issues like anxiety and depression, those are emotions. When you look at the family structure and the lineage, you can see the patterns. Most times, if not all, someone like a parent or grandparent has suffered from that too, and it gets passed on, right? So if we as parents become very anxious, that energy, because our kids are around us most of the time, they can absorb that anxiety. They can absorb that worry, you know? Why do you think most kids, when they feel something, even though they're across the room, but then we're feeling anxious or nervous because we can't pay a bill or behind on the mortgage, most of our children will come and comfort us because they feel that, right? That's how great the energy dispersion is, the energy that's being dispersed, you know, in throughout that room because of how we feel. And, you know, kids are highly sensitive to energetic, you know, energy being emitted like that from a person, you know? So you can't really, that's why, you know, with us here too, like when I feel any type of negative energy or negative emotion arise in my body, like I have a huge toolkit, you know, to help me regulate, but I regulate it in a way that it's very mindful, it's very conscious, right? And at first I'm looking at my environment, are my kids around, you know, like they'll see me all the time if I'm a bit stressed out. They'll see me do breath work, you know, they'll see me like meditate. They'll come and ask me like, Dad, are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm just going through something right now, feeling a bit overwhelmed, but I'll be all right. You know, I'm just gonna, you know, go do some self-care real quick, and then, you know, we can go about our day. And then they know it, right? They see it, they know it, they come, and they're like, oh, Dad, you're feeling better? Yeah, I'm feeling good. Let's play some more, you know?
Yeah.
So.
And you know, thank you just for talking about like the energy in motion, like you described that. I know I love how you said that our emotion, energy in motion,
Emotion, yeah.
and these that like we all need to learn about. We all need to refresh ourselves, and we all need to, you know, be taught. So, man, thank you for this conversation, bro. Thank you for just this build. Thank you, you know, this energy exchange.
No,
And
I
just
appreciate it.
so like, would you let anyone know anything that you have, if you have any offerings for people or anything for anybody whom this might have been their first time seeing you? Would you let them know where they could receive that?
Oh, yeah, of course. And thank you so much for having this conversation with me. Like I said, I know it's long overdue. I actually wanted to talk about you a lot more too, but now it's been about me. So maybe we need to rewind and have another conversation where I'm asking the questions
Oh,
about you, because I know you're doing a lot of good things. I know you've been, you know, working on a lot more other projects and stuff like that, which I love. So kudos to you too. But for those that are watching right now that want to connect, you know, or just start the conversation about everything. So, you know, I'm a holistic wellness coach, and I specialize in helping people on their healing journey, you know, by implementing self-care strategies and routines. And so I have my own methodology in doing that, because I truly believe that self-care is a direct path to healing. So it can kickstart this ability to help you understand the things that you need to work through, right? And like I mentioned in our conversation today, healing is, well, what we need to do, right? I always say healing is the hustle, or healing is the new hustle, right? Like we have to really get connected with ourselves, and self-care is healthcare. And a lot of people have forgotten to really truly take care of ourselves, because we were never taught that as well, right? But once we turn the attention on ourselves, we then start to unlock and uncover all of these things that we might have to work through. And it can be difficult, but it is possible, you know? And so if you want to connect with that, you can DM me, follow me on all my social media channels at Chanthalangsy, or you can go to jchanthalangsy.com. I have a whole bunch of free resources there as well. If you're looking for one-on-one coaching, I'm accepting new clients. There's an application form that you can fill out. And yeah, I utilize, like I said, the emotion code and body code in my coaching to get down to the root problems of things. And then we create an individualized, you know, plan week by week to achieve your goals, to get you to, you know, from survivor mode to sustainable self-care, from hurting to healing, you know?
mm-hmm. Hurting to healing,
Yeah. Yeah.
thriving to thriving.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, exactly. You know, surviving to thriving. That's right. Because we all need to be thriving. We all need to be, that's our birthright. You know, we should be able to do that unapologetically, you know, authentically. So, you know, in the things that I help my clients do, you know, my coaching clients, it's like we help you cultivate that awareness that there's some things that you really need to work through. But then at the end of the day, once you get to that point of healing, what you're truly doing is you're being your most authentic self. You know, your true self is in there, but it's just under a lot of that trauma, conditioning, limiting beliefs, you know, like your true self is in there. You've just forgotten who it was, right? So when you peel the layers off through the healing journey, through realizations, through coaching, whatever it is that you're doing, you're going to find that the person who you truly are is already there. So when you act from that person, your most authentic self, life begins to look very different, you know, begins to be more amazing, more synchronicities, more opportunities, and more, you know, wonder, all of that.
More awesome.
So, more awesomeness, yes. yes. Hey, but before we end, we definitely have to do this again. So I want to say it live now that I want to have another conversation, but the roles are going to be turned around. That I want to, you know, be the one asking the questions, because I want to really know more about you and, you know, what you're doing. I know you have the podcast. You have a couple of books now that you've written, right?
For sure.
Been published. Yeah. So I read the first one, the sun gazing one, which I do since I've read it. You know, like I at least take 10 minutes a day and just, you know, even with my kids, I'm out in the sun. We need to get sun on our skin and, you know, look at the sun and stuff like that. So yeah, I know you're doing big things, and I always follow you and your conversations here on Instagram. I don't really come on Instagram live as much, but you know, I was like, yeah, you've inspired me to like do that. So thank you so much.
All right, we'll do a part 2.
We'll do a part 2.
Okay.
For sure. All right, my brother. I will see you soon. Thanks everyone for joining. Talk soon.
Back to
Yes. Bye.